know that food prices have been on the increase. We'll be looking at that today. Also, multidimensional poverty index, MPC's decisions, inflation, and in fact, when I take a look at of course, in economics, you're looking at high unemployment rate and inflation. It amounts to misery. So with even the result or the report that we saw from the NBS last week, it indeed tells us that many Nigerians are miserable at this point. We'll be looking at that today with my guest on the show shortly to see, proffer some kind of solutions if they are. Perhaps what has failed, why are 133 million Nigerians poor, and what can this current administration do to alleviate poverty, also to bring down inflation, with today's meeting that would be the last for the year from the CBN's MPC. So we have a lot for you on the program, but we will get started with our business news. The International Monetary Fund has warned Nigerians to prepare for higher food prices and risk in 2022 due to recent floods and high fertilizer costs. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, in October 2022, food inflation reached 23.72% year over year, with certain food items experiencing increases of 50 to 100%. The federal government's continued reliance on the Central Bank of Nigeria to finance its budget deficit, as well as climate change, were cited as additional risk factors. Nigeria's crude oil production for the month of November was ranked as 7 by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. The ranking was determined after the nation's production output and monthly review for October. Nigeria's production came at a meager 1.014 million barrels per day in October, placing Nigeria 7th behind Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Iraq, Angola, and Algeria. In terms of crude oil production, Nigeria used to be ranked 5th behind countries like Angola and Algeria. However, the economy has faced challenges as a result of oil theft and pipeline vandalism, which plagued crude oil production, and as a result, Nigeria has lost about 415 billion naira to the shutdown of 9 crude oil terminals within the space of 2 months in 2022. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, is to launch the revised Capital Market Master Plan that is expected to be the roadmap for the capital market for the next few years. The 10-year master plan, which was introduced in 2014, is currently being updated to take into account, among others, the dynamism of the market and advancements in financial technology. According to the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Lamido Yuguda, the revised Capital Market Master Plan 2015 to 2025, created by the Securities and Exchange Commission in cooperation with stakeholders, captures the difficulties the capital market faces in fulfilling its responsibility to drive national economic growth, but more importantly, it offers a roadmap for taking advantage of these opportunities to better position the capital market as the catalyst for economic growth. According to a 2022 World Bank report, 114 million Nigerians lacked access to basic sanitation facilities, and about 70 million lacked access to basic drinking water services. The Global Water Security and Sanitation Partnership report revealed that the availability of piped water is steadily decreasing, stating that even the urban water utilities will frequently fall short of satisfying the needs of the already small customer base, forcing the majority of Nigerians to rely on pricey and frequently unsafe alternatives like shallow private wells and private water vendors. The report, however, noted that the Global Water Security and Sanitation Partnership provided significant assistance to support the government's commitment to reform and build government capacity. Countries finally came to an agreement at the COP27 climate early on Sunday. The agreement sets up a loss and damage fund to help poor countries being battered by climate disasters. After tense negotiations that ran through the night, the Egyptian COP27 presidency released the final text for a deal and called a plenary session to quickly push it through. Delegates praised the breakthrough on setting up the fund as climate justice for its aim in helping vulnerable countries cope with storms, floods, and other disasters being fueled by rich nations' historic carbon emissions.
I now invite the COP to adopt the decision entitled Funding Arrangements for Responding to Loss and Damage Associated with the Adverse Effects of Climate Change.
This is the make or break decade. But what we have in front of us is not enough of a step forward for people and planet. It does not bring enough added efforts from major emitters to increase and accelerate their emissions cuts. It does not bring a higher degree of confidence that we will achieve the commitments made under the Paris Agreement and in Glasgow last year. It does not address the yawning gap between climate science and our climate policies.
Emissions peaking before 2025, as the science tells us, is necessary. Not in this text. Clear follow-through on the phase down of coal, not in this text. A clear commitment to phase out all fossil fuels, not in this text. And the energy text, weakened in the final minutes.
According to Maurice Chang, Taiwanese chip maker and TSMC company's founder, on Monday declared his intention to produce chips using cutting-edge 3-nanometer technology at its new factory in Arizona, United States of America. However, the plans have not yet been completely finalized. TSMC's plans to construct additional chip-making facilities in Arizona, including discussions regarding whether its next facility, which will begin production with slower, less efficient 5-nanometer chips, should be more advanced and produce chips using 3-nanometer technology. All right, let's quickly take a break, and when we return, I'll be running you through the numbers for today. Of course, we'll start from how the local bourse ended last week, but it was a positive one, so don't get scared. But we've seen the year-to-date return also appreciated from about 2%. It was about 2-3 weeks ago to where it is right now. I'll be giving you more details when we return from the break. To stay.
Here is a new and refreshing offer for our esteemed audience across the globe. The new AIT Cloud TV is an online stream service that offers you attractive opportunities to view our rich, exciting, and entertaining programs anytime, anywhere. AIT Cloud TV is available on the web on www.ait.app, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Android TV. You can also download the mobile app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Simply connect to the internet, download the app, register, and watch live or catch up on unlimited hours of exciting shows. AIT Cloud TV. TV on the go.
This is Moneyline with Nancy. How vulnerable is Nigeria? What are the economic challenges that the next leader, the next administration would inherit?
Part of the strategy really is to ensure that people have money in their hands.
We also need fiscal policies and actions.
The aspiration for us is to make Nigeria a net exporter of petroleum products.
We want to steer discussion to good economic policies to the benefit of the country.
It is in difficult time that nations take decisions to be and build their country.
You either make more money or you reduce your spending.
If you waste time or you spend time, what you are doing is you are wasting your ability to create wealth.
We'll still be talking about Nigeria's problems because Nigeria's problems no dey finish, you know. Welcome back. The equities market, that's the Nigerian equities market, ended the week on a high note. That's last week now, as the benchmark all-share index gained 122 basis points, as you can see right here on the wall, to close at 44,492.7 points. While the year-to-date return and market capitalization, year-to-date return closed at 4.16%. Market capitalization ended at 24 or about 23 trillion naira. Okay, so you're taking a look at what happened last week, as it were. Interbank rates remained in the double digits for the majority of last week, as the FGN bond auction settlement further drained system liquidity. For this week, what are we expecting in the money markets? Interbank rates may likely remain elevated. Last week, we saw the Treasury bills market. It was quite bullish. This week, market observers are anticipating a mildly bullish sentiment that will persist. Let's see how that goes. Last week, the FGN local bond market was mostly bullish, with some seller interest seen on the 2024 and 2037 maturities. We also saw that the Debt Management Office sold 269.16 billion naira in bonds at last week's bond auction against a bid of 225 billion. I mentioned earlier that the monetary policy decision is due this week. In fact, it started today. I guess the meeting is on the way as we speak. It will end tomorrow and is expected to shape markets' direction. Talking about the money market and all of that, and the equities market would also take a look at what the MPC is doing. We know that since the MPC raised interest rates at its last meeting in October, the stock market was definitely affected. But I've spoken to a lot of analysts, and if you're still keen in investing in the Nigerian stock market, or you feel like, okay, you have new money, you want to come in and buy stocks, first of all, you've got to speak to a financial advisor. You can do that on your own to take a look at what your risks are, assess what your correct condition and even your income and all of that. So don't go in there blindly, or because everyone is buying ABC stock, you want to buy it like that. So once their hands get burnt, you would also be burnt. So you've got to have financial knowledge. And Eurobond market was largely bearish last week, as hawkish comments from U.S. Federal Reserve officials fueled sell-offs across our board. Now, if we move over to the currencies market, the Naira, which is our own currency, gained about 2 basis points against the US dollar, reaching 445 Naira 67 kobo at investors and exporters window. Many Nigerians will say, what are those assessing FX from the banks? That if you go to the banks now and say you want dollars perhaps for PTA or BTA, they will tell you they don't have. So many Nigerians actually go to the parallel market to assess foreign currency, and we've seen how the Naira has really nosedived in that market. Just about a few days ago, about 2 weeks ago or so, we saw the Naira depreciating to close to 930 Naira before it moderated to about 7 something, 6 something. And as of last week, when I was speaking to a BDC operator, he did tell me that the Naira, the parallel market, was oscillating around 810 to 8.15. All right, let's move over to the United States, where S&P 500 futures fell early today ahead of another round of retail earnings to kick off the times rates. Our own MPC meeting today and tomorrow. Let's see how that goes. Will they increase interest rates? Let's see, because the last meeting, the MPC did surprise a lot of people. Today also, Asian Pacific shares fell mostly due to growing COVID concerns in China, where the central bank kept in benchmark lending rates, or what they call loan prime rates, on hold as expected. If we take a look at commodities, all prices are falling more than $2 per barrel and we're seeing that it's on track for a second weekly decline as investors are worried about weakening Chinese demand and further increases in U.S. interest rate following indications from the U.S. Federal Reserve. Gold prices are falling, and we can see that gold prices are also, as of last week, there was a weekly drop. But let's see, it's just a beginning. It's either it's positive, it's negative, or is muted, what we call unchanged. Other commodities that we track for you: palm oil is up 1%, wheat is trading at $808. You will recall that the Russia-Ukraine crisis that started earlier this year, I think in February, is still ongoing, and that has been impacting the prices of grains, as those two countries contribute majorly to grains production. The show that because of the crisis in Ukraine, exacerbated by Russia, we've seen that inflation also is higher because of that. But let's quickly take a break, and when we come back, let's get into the nitty-gritty of my conversation today. We'll be talking about the MPI, the Multidimensional Poverty Index report, as released by the NBS, inflation, MPC decisions. What else? There are so many things to talk about. Like I always say, Nigeria problem no they finish. So we'll just be removing it piece by piece. But as we are discussing appropriate solutions, I hope that those that are interested and those that are leading us are taking a listen to those solutions. But it's our own duty here to keep you abreast of whatever is happening and link it to how it affects you. Let's do that after the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program. Johnson Chukwu is joining me right now. He's the Group Managing Director at Carry Asset Management. Good morning, Chief Chuku. Welcome to the program. Can you hear me and can you see me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you. I can hear you loudly and can see you clearly. Good morning, Chief Nancy, and thank you for having me.
Welcome to the program. Let's get started, and let's start with what is on the screen right now, the Multidimensional Poverty Index report. Many of us have seen the report. Some of us have read it, line by line. But I would like you to explain in simple terms. What? Okay, I can see that the connection is freezing there. Let's quickly take another break, and when we return, we will be speaking again. We'll try to reconnect with Johnson Chuku, the GMD at Carry Asset Management, to stay. All right, welcome back to the program. Just before the break, I asked Johnson Chuku, the Group Managing Director at Carry Asset Management, about the Multidimensional Index report that was released by the National Bureau of Statistics last week. Mr. Chuku, can you speak on that? I did say earlier for you to explain in simple terms what the Multidimensional Poverty Index report means.
Okay, once again, apologies for the break in transmission. I think my network has been it was unstable at that point. So what I was saying is that the Multidimensional Poverty Index is basically measuring the lack of access to certain basic necessities of human existence that Nigerians have. And it's saying that about 2/3 of Nigerians lack access to basic human needs, such as having access to enough food, having access to proper sanitary facilities, having access to education, having access to good health care facilities, and that the more distant you are from having access to good health care facility means you are poor in terms of health-wise. The more lack of access, you don't have good sanitary facilities, simply you are poor in that aspect. You also have a financial poverty, which means you don't have enough financial resources to live a decent life. And then you have poverty when it comes to access to food. So what they have done is to add the multiplicity of what you need for a decent and proper existence. And they're saying, look, if you don't have access to some of these basic necessities of life, you are poor. And they have looked at that. Many Nigerians, about 2/3 of Nigerians, about 65% of Nigerians lack access to 2 or 3 of these key critical human existence requirement for proper and decent human existence. That's basically what they measure. That's what they talk of multi-dimensional. That's not just one dimension. Previously, most measures of poverty were measuring on financial access or having access to economic resources or financial resources. Like most of the measures we have looked at, we are looking at having that if you don't have access to up to $1.9 a day, that you are considered to be extremely poor. But now they're also saying, look, beyond having access to income, you may also realize that you don't have access to good health care. So if you are sick and you don't have access to good health care, that means you are poor. If you don't have access to good water supply, you are poor. If you don't have access to good educational facilities like children, like in the case of Nigeria, where you have more than 67% of Nigerian children do not have access to good educational facilities. That they also among the things are considered as extreme poor, people who are considered as poor. So people who live in rural areas are considered to be poorer because many of them don't have access to good health care facility, they don't have access to good quality education, they don't have access to good sanitary facilities. That's what this measure is talking about, that for an average Nigerian, do you have lack access to good medical facilities, do you have access to good sanitary care facilities, do you have lack access to good educational facilities? If you have two, or if you lack access to 2 or 3 of these, you are considered to be multidimensionally poor.
Okay, Mr. Chukwu, I lost a bit of what you said. I don't think it's from you, but I just lost a bit of what you said towards the end. But let me go to the next question and ask if this report really gives us a clarity of the situation of the poverty condition in the country. And the B part of the question is, were you surprised when that report was released? Because I've also spoken to a few people and they did tell me, Nancy, we know that these things exist. It's just that it's now, you know, in paper and perhaps telling us where exactly the poorest people in the country really reside and all of that. Were you surprised? And do you think that this gives us a clear understanding of the poverty situation in the country?
Yes, Nancy, I think it does. For me, it should be a working tool for the government to begin to address the issue of poverty in a more holistic manner. Yes, was I surprised? I would say no, in the sense that this is more of a consolidation of the several facets of poverty that we see, we touch, and we feel in this country. If you go to the rural areas and you realize that most rural areas, communities do not have access to medical facilities. My town is lucky to have that, but I know people who commute 20, 30, 40 kilometers to get to the facility in my town. And you can imagine if somebody is in a critical situation, you will die before you get to the nearest medical facility. So that means that poverty has manifested itself in you losing your life. So it wasn't surprising to me, because what has happened that Nigeria seemed to have suffered what we call arrested development. In the 80s, the priority was to make sure they have healthcare facilities, at least basic healthcare facilities at all the nooks and crannies of the country in each locality. But it seemed to have forgotten that. Today, we have gradually become the poverty capital of the country, of the world, in terms of access to education. Nigeria has the highest number of school-age children who are out of school. So that's a manifestation. We all know this, and we talk about it every day. We talk about the figures now and then. And then you talk of the issue of access to food. We know a lot of Nigerians are actually finding it difficult to feed themselves. So it's a consolidation of the facets of poverty we all feel that sometimes we tend to ignore. Like I said earlier, it should be a working tool for the government to address poverty in a holistic manner. If you look at what has happened in a country like China, like what India is going through now, if people are availed good water, access to good water supply, access to good sanitary facilities, free access to education, quality education, and they have free access to basic medical facilities, they will not we won't have the level of mortality we have today. We won't have the level of poverty we have today, because in that case you don't need your own direct cash outlay to enjoy some of these basic needs of human endeavor.
Okay, if we take a look at these numbers, really, do you think that these numbers add up, bearing in mind that this administration is one administration that has touted that it has created social intervention programs? The cash conditional transfer is there. The school children feeding program is also there. This is an administration that has spent about $700 million on social intervention. And I'm actually scouting for how the $700 million have been spent, and on those it has been spent on. If we take a look at the survey that was done by the NBS and its partners concerning this report, it was said that 56,610 households were surveyed. Do these numbers really add up? Because if government is saying that we're spending billions of naira on social intervention, yet poverty is increasing, or has increased rather, But I also need to put a caveat there and bring in this also to your analysis. We know that this government suffered 2 recessions and also 1 pandemic, COVID-19, lockdown and all of that. So I'd like you to really holistically look at all of this also in the terms of how those monies have been spent. And the numbers we're seeing is starting 133 million Nigerians are very poor.
Okay, Nancy, the way I would look at it is that this report should actually be a wake-up call for the government. In the first place, we should realize that the efforts so far dissipated on an attempt to fight poverty has not worked. If the number of people that are suffering from multi-dimensional poverty is about 133 million versus 3% of Nigerian population, then you can clearly say that the intervention that the government has done, the same intervention they've done, have not been effective. And why were they not effective? Because they are ephemeral. They have not touched on the fundamental issues that are impinging on the welfare of Nigerians. Handouts have never been an effective means to fight poverty. In the first place, I have said this separately at your two decisions would